Good day, ladies and gentlemen, and I certainly hope you're having a fine, spectacular day. Okay, what I've got here is a really long-winded story that I'm not going to make long-winded because I just don't feel that it would do any good. But this is about a family heirloom, meaning this rifle right here, or an inheritance rifle, if you will, that went terribly wrong. This rifle right here used to belong to my grandfather. His name was James Lester Brooks of Kalispell, Montana. And without going into a whole bunch of history about my granddad, one of the things that he did many things in his life, but one of the things that he did was owned a sporting goods store in Kalispell, Montana for 20 years, and he was a master gunsmith. He was one of these kind of guys that wouldn't go out and pay no $200-300, because back in them days, rifles only cost 150, $200 or whatever. Have you brand new? It's not like now, but he would take these old military surplus rifles and retrofit them. You follow me? He'd fix them up to his liking. He'd turn around and sell them. I seen the time they took a $25 rifle, fixed it all up and everything, turned around and sold it for $200. And back in them days, that was a lot of money. This particular rifle right here is chambered in it. He retrofitted it this way. It's chambered in that old cartridge 257 Roberts, okay? And let me show you this rifle, then I'll finish the story. You'll never see another one like it. This is a Mauser 98 action. This is a German rifle. And of course, this stock that's on here isn't an old military stock, but I'll guarantee you when he got a hold of this rifle, it had an old military stock, but he dropped a better stock into it. More than likely, knowing my granddad, he took and re-rifled the barrel into 257 Roberts caliber because he had a rifle making lathe, if you will. He couldn't make his own barrels, but he could re-rifle a barrel, if that makes any sense to you. But this is, for all practical purposes, a Mauser 98 German action. The safety's right here. Very old-fashioned kind of a rifle. And it's topped off. I know that's a real funny-looking scope, but it's topped off with a 4-power Weaver scope, straight 4-power. Back in the old days, the scopes were a lot longer, and the objective lenses and stuff were a lot smaller than they are now. Okay, but it's got a 22-inch barrel on this guy. Definitely a collector's item, if you will. But here's the story. I got out of the service in 1973, the winter of 1973. In fact, I'll never forget that ETS date, elapsed time of service, was December 5th of 1973. And by that time, my grandfather was very sick. And this grandfather that I speak of, James Lester Brooks, was my mom's dad, okay? He was very sick. Basically, he was on his deathbed. The family had him in Polson, Montana, in a convalescent home for a while there, but they decided to move him back up to Kalispell, where his home was. But many times, I used to go visit my grandfather a lot, because I used to fish with him when I was a kid and kick around with him as much as I could. And I was one of his more favorite grandsons, because like he told me, he had lots of grandsons. But like he told me, he said, "Jim, you're one of the few grandsons I got that likes to hunt and fish." And he made it perfectly clear to my step-grandmother, in other words, his wife, that I was to have this rifle when he died, okay? And he died, I do believe it was in August of 1974, so, and I, with my own ears, heard him tell me and his wife, my grandmother, my step-grandmother, at least 3 times to make sure that this rifle got in my hands. Well, after my grandfather died, it never did. To make a long story short, my granddad had 4 daughters, one of them being my mother, and 1 son, in other words, an uncle. And this particular uncle of mine really didn't like me all that well. To make a long story short, he high-boshed off with this rifle, and to make another long story short, I just barely acquired this rifle about a week ago, and I must be sitting here thanking my brother Nick Bourne of Lebanon, Oregon, because he's the one that finally ended up with it through a whole bunch of a melodity of travels, if you will. This rifle's been around in order for it to get in my possession. But my brother came up here from Lebanon, Oregon on vacation and insisted that I, take the rifle off his hands because he ended up with it. Because what the deal was, well, to make a long story short, this rifle right here ended up in the hands of a bunch of relatives that weren't supposed to have this rifle. This rifle, when my grandfather died, went from Kalispell, Montana to El Paso, Texas. Then this rifle made its way to Colorado Springs, Colorado. Then this rifle made its way to Big Fork, Montana. And then the people up there in Big Fork, Montana that had this rifle, and it wasn't rightfully theirs, I guess their conscience must have got to bothering them, but they relinquished this rifle to one of my other cousins. This is a long, you know all these relative stories goes, this is long-winded, but relinquished this rifle to one of my cousins who lives in Hewlett, Wyoming, over there by Devil's Tower. So you see, this rifle went from Kalispell to El Paso, Texas, Colorado Springs, Colorado, then to Big Fork, Montana, then to Hewlett, Wyoming. And when this cousin of mine tried to approach me or call me about this rifle, I didn't want to hear anything. I was upset. I was mad. I've been mad for years. I'd enlisted the help of even my granddad's sister, who had a big ranch out in Round Butte, Ronan, Montana. And I knew if there was anybody that could get this rifle for me, it would be my Aunt Effie, but she was unable to get this rifle. So what my cousin ended up doing is driving this rifle right here all the way from Hewlett, Wyoming to Lebanon, Oregon, to my brother's place, Nick Bourne's place. And my brother was here just about a week ago on vacation, and he finally brought me this rifle. Not that my brother, he didn't have anything to do with this. He was just the sole person, the person that ended up with the rifle, but he knew there was a lot of people in the Brooks side of the family, my mom's dad's side of the family, that knew that this rifle was mine. But the simple fact of the matter is my granddad never did put this in writing about this rifle. So my brother ended up, all in places I just got done saying that this rifle's been, and then my brother drove it all the way to me from Lebanon, Oregon. And, but the message, ladies and gentlemen, to this video right here is if you know that your days are short and everything, for God's sake, get a proper well-made. And don't go by this, just giving people verbal orders or whatever have you. Create a video if you have to, or go to LegalZoom, or do whatever, but get stuff high and tight when it comes to wills, because you would think that greed and selfishness and stuff like that wouldn't exist in a family, but it sure does, because you're looking at a guy here that's lamented for years and felt terrible and bad and sad and depressed because I never got this rifle that was promised to me. And yet here I sat, all exactly 43 years later, I finally got this rifle. 43 years, ladies and gentlemen. And here I am, 65 years old, and I could have been hunting with this rifle all along and whatnot have you. It's in pretty doggone good shape, except for I noticed the scope's got a pretty bad ding on it. But my grandfather actually did take an Alaskan brown bear with this 257 Roberts, but Like I say, this is a highly modified rifle with a German Mauser 98 action. Does have a 22-inch barrel. I just got done measuring it. But one thing about this, it's right-handed bolt, and I'm left-handed. But it's just the idea that this rifle should have been in my possession all this time. And for the longest time, I didn't even know who had the rifle. For many, many years, I didn't even know who had the rifle. Well, it ended up in the hands of this uncle who was, you know, my granddad's only boy, who was executor of the will. It ended up in the possession of one of his daughters. You know, somebody that doesn't even hunt and fish, and neither does her husband. You know, I found this stuff out about, I don't know, 10 years ago, 10, 15 years ago, where this rifle fight, because the family kept it from me. Because the simple fact of the matter is that uncle of mine didn't like me. He was a World War II veteran, and I'm a Vietnam veteran, but here's another case of a Vietnam veteran getting discriminated against. And also, I didn't share the same religious beliefs that my uncle did, and so therefore he despised me because of that. Yeah, I got news for you. All of this stuff's just a whole bunch of horse crap. But like I say, the most important thing that I can do in this video here, before I shut this file off, is thank my brother Nick Boren for making sure that justice was carried out. Because 43 years is a long time for somebody to wait for a family heirloom. And you can bet your rear end that that this rifle here will go to my son or one of my relatives, and it will be in writing. And just before I close here, let me tell you this. In my lifetime, I have never been selfish with firearms. Here it is. Let me give you a rundown to show you how much different I am than my relatives. I've only got one son. This is what I've given him in my life. I've given him a semi-automatic Beretta 22 pistol. I've given him a Sig Sauer 5.22 semi-automatic 22 rimfire. He likes 22s. And here about 3 weeks ago, I just got done giving him a Henry 22 Magnum, a lever action 22 Magnum carbine. Okay, I'm not even done yet. I've got a son-in-law that's married to my middle daughter that lives over in Belgrade, Montana. I gave him here about, 12 years ago, I gave him a Model 94 Winchester chambered in .44 Magnum. Okay, I got two grandsons by my only son. My youngest grandson, I gave him a lever action 450 Marlin. That's the most powerful lever action rifle in production today. His oldest son, who happens to be another James Boren, I gave him a 1969 Teddy Roosevelt commemorative Model 94 30-30. So that's how many rifles I gave away right there. I just named them off. And yet, it took me 43 years to get this rifle from a bunch of selfish, greedy, conniving, lying relatives. Whatever you people do, this is the meat of this video right here. Don't let anything like this ever happen in your family. Get your will straight. You know, make sure that people don't, because this word of mouth thing in this day and age with people being as greedy as they are, blah, 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 and whatnot have you, just don't work, even among relatives. And it is a crying shame. It really is. That's really all I got to say, but I want you to have one more look at this. Mauser 98. My grandfather chambered this, built this rifle up into a 257 Roberts, and it's just, an absolute collector's item, and there's, no ifs, ands, or buts about this. I hope this camera's picking all this up because I'm on the other side and can't see what I'm doing. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, I thank you very much for watching this video, and hope you caught the essence to what I was saying here about this will business and everything like this. But this is an inheritance rifle that went horribly or terribly wrong, if you will. All right, walk in peace. We'll see you on down the trail, and thanks for watching the Movie File.